Forgotten Winchesters. That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, Winchester, I don't think I have to say, has some really iconic American, just awesome guns and cartridges, but they've also got some forgotten ones. Some just swing and a miss. Some just for whatever reason got replaced or forgotten. Unless you're a hardcore Winchester aficionado, you probably... maybe you've heard about them only in passing, not super familiar with them, or haven't heard about them at all. That's what we're going to talk about today, Forgotten Winchesters. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way with Almighty God at the center. Biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Bio bullet points in the show notes. All right, let's get into it. Some forgotten Winchesters. The Winchester Model 70, the Winchester Model 70, pre-64, it's so good, it's the rifleman's rifle, and it is. Marsha, right? Everybody knows about it, everybody hears about it. It is the rifleman's rifle, and for good reason. It is a phenomenal rifle. I'm blessed to have a pre-64 Winchester featherweight. It is just, except for blued steel, which I'm not a big fan of, it's about as close to perfect for a hunting rifle as has ever been designed. It's phenomenal. There was a rifle that came out before it. It's also a very, very good rifle, and obviously pre-64 because it came out before Winchester started cheapening its manufacturing procedure. We'll maybe get into that later, but it does not command the high prices that the pre-64 Winchester does. So if you want that old school craftsmanship, similar design, but without the giant price tag because you just can't afford it, you may look at the Winchester Model 54. That's right. They made a good bolt-action rifle before the Winchester Model 70, and that was the Model 54. It's a phenomenal rifle. So you may look into that if you ever come across one. I came across one not too long ago, one at Cabela's, and I thought about buying it. Maybe I should have, but I have a pre-64 Winchester Model 70. So I don't, that's not, I'm not, I don't know that I would have done much with it, so it's probably better for somebody that's a high-end collector that's going to appreciate it. But these don't command the price tag that the pre-64s do because everybody knows about the pre-64. It's kind of like the Colt Python, like everybody knows about them. But there's a lot of other Colt snake guns that maybe you could get for a decent price outside of the scope of today's discussion. The Winchester Model 54 is a great option if you want that kind of old-school Winchester Americana craftsmanship, but you don't want the pre-64 price tag. And it's a good gun, by all accounts. It's maybe a little bit less refined than the Model 70, but still a very good old-world craftsmanship gun. I'm not sure all the chamberings you'll find it in, but you'll surely find it in 30-06, which is a fantastic cartridge. I'm not sure when it came out, but I think the Model 70s came out in 30, I want to say 36, but sometime in the 30s, the Winchester Model 70 came out. And the 270, I believe, came out in 1925 because it's a centennial this year. Came out in 1925, so you may find some of these in the 270 also. Okay, another one. Lever lovers out there. You lever lovers. There's a lot of you. You are probably 4570, I'm going to get one and it's going to be so cool on Instagram and throw a suppressor on it and M-lock rails. But if you want a more classic, really cool, more obscure, lever gun that's still pretty practical if you're into big game hunting, have you ever heard of the 348 Winchester? Not many have. But it's a cool cartridge. It's kind of a heavy hitter, kind of a sledgehammer in the lever gun world, especially for its time. Before everybody thought that you needed to shoot, 700 yards to shoot an elk, people were doing it with a 348 Winchester. You want a little bit more oomph, a little bit more of that TKO knockout factor, which I don't think really applies much, but some people love it. If you want a little bit more of that big heavy bullet, you're a big heavy bullet guy, but you don't want to go the 4570, the 348 Winchester. There's some of those kicking around. I think the Model 71 Winchester, it may have been the only It may have been the only chambering for that rifle, the Model 71 Winchester. That also is on the list. Like, the Model 71 Winchester goes with this. It is a very forgotten gun. I don't know that they ever made the 71 in any other chambering, although they may have, other than the 348 Winchester. And I don't know if they ever chambered the 348 Winchester in anything other than the Model 71. But they may have done both. They may have had the 348 Winchester in a bolt action, or they may have had the Model 71 in a different chambering. I am not that, like, I don't have like manuscripts on all the different serialized numbers and years of Winchesters. But the Model 71 Winchester and the 348 Winchester, both of those are cool. Both of those are kind of forgotten. You may look into those if that is something that interests you. Also very similar along these lines, but you don't have to get an obscure rifle, but also an obscure cartridge. Did you know that there's a 375 Winchester? You probably know about the 375 H&H. You probably know about the 375 Ruger. But did you know there is a 375 Winchester? Knew a man that had one. He's a good guy. I really like that guy. Things with his daughter didn't work out, so I didn't stay in touch with him, but a fantastic guy. And that was his bear gun, 375 Winchester lever action. I believe it's just a Model 94, which is a good gun. It's legendary for a reason, so it's outside of the scope of this discussion. But yeah, the 375 Winchester, it's also a heavy hitter. If you want something to maybe, 4570, it's become the next, like, becoming the lever action 308. It's so common. But not the 375 Winchester. So if you want something a little bit different, a little bit heavy hitter, and the 348 Winchester has kind of an odd diameter bullet, so it may be hard to find. If you're a reloader, the better option may be the 375 Winchester. There's plenty of 375 bullets kicking around. So, and the Model 94 is fairly common. So that is a pretty cool forgotten gun there. If you love history, if you've ever kind of like history and fantasy, like forgotten, or not forgotten, but alternate timeline history, you probably know that the Model 1903 Springfield served us very well in World War I and World War II even. And also the Model 1917. Also, I'm going to come back to that, but the Model 1917 actually used in greater numbers, I believe, in World War I by us. It was an infield that we used because we were making them for the Brits. Where was I? Oh, during World War I, Winchester had a self-loader. I believe it's a 351 Winchester self-loader. It's a cool gun. Could you imagine? Because people think that the long-range craze is something new, like, I can shoot 1,000 yards. Bro, the Mosin Nagant has sights out to 1,200 yards, and they were doing it. You're not doing anything new that they weren't doing 100 years ago, so settle down. You just probably are doing it with more computers. They were doing it with stick-to-itiveness, know-how, and Kentucky windage. But, they quickly found out in trench warfare you probably didn't need 1,000-yard sights on your rifle, even though, you could shoot that far now with modern Spitzer bullets and, bottleneck cartridges. You could get out to 1,000 yards pretty easy and still be effective. However, that wasn't really the opportunities that presented themselves. You were looking at trench raids. You were looking at up close and personal. Sometimes they would leave the rifles all together and grab handguns and hand grenades. Well, imagine if America had armed its frontline infantry troops, like per squad, most of them, with 351 Winchester self-loaders, like an intermediate cartridge auto-loading rifle, which they had back in World War I. They also had the Remington Model 8, I think was around at this time, but that's outside. We're talking about Winchesters. The 351 Winchester self-loader. Maybe the 356. It's one of those. It's an early, kind of sleek, kind of svelte, pretty sweet self-loader. Now, it's not a full-powered rifle cartridge, but it's an intermediate. It's on par with modern intermediate rifle cartridges. Imagine if we had done that. Imagine if our American troops had gone over with 351 Winchester self-loaders. And maybe one man per squad had a 1903 for, longer engagements. But, out of a rifle team, let's say 3 out of 4 had Winchester self-loaders and hand grenades. Man, that would have been legit. Because they didn't know where they were going to fight. They thought maybe they'd be shooting out at, 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards. But they quickly found out you're probably going to be in a trench with a bunch of dudes fighting hand-to-hand with bayonets. Imagine if you had an autoloader instead of a bolt action. Oh, what a sweet time that would have been for those men who had that rifle instead of a bolt action. So anyway, that's a pretty cool forgotten gun. 351, 356. It's one of those two, I believe. It's kind of an odd number, but a really cool rifle, a really cool cartridge. Never really caught on, but if it had been mass adopted in the war, you had better believe that it would have been. These are so obscure. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting one and shooting one, but if you're a collector looking for something different, that would be one. I don't know if I would even shoot it. Now, I have come across them before that were like back when they weren't super exotic, like drilled and tapped for a scope. If you come across one like that's been sporterized, yeah, I mean, if you want to try and reload for that and shoot it, probably not an issue. As you break apart, you might be in trouble. But yeah, that's a cool rifle, a cool little carbine, way, way, way ahead of its time. Now, I said we come back to the 1917 Enfield, but you may be surprised to know that we used a lot of those, and some of them were made by Winchester. So if you're looking for an old school Winchester gun, that's not the Model 70, that's not the Model 54, but a really good classic Americana. A lot of these were sporterized. You could probably find an original if you're like a World War I, World War II collector. But if you're just a shooter, you might be able to find a Winchester 1917 that was sporterized. So they are out there. That is a Winchester rifle made to the same quality as many other Winchester rifles. Very fast action, right? The Enfields are known for being like the quick handling, fast variant of the bolt actions of the era. So pretty cool gun, and you might find some sporterized, or you might find an original if you're a collector. But the Model 1917 Enfield, actually quite a number were made by Winchester. Now, Winchester levers are iconic. We talked about that, and we talked about some cool cartridges they were in, but you're probably thinking about like the open top design, maybe the angle ejected design, but that classic 94 Winchester, tube feed. What if I told you that Winchester made a lever action that was, I consider, still practical and relevant today? They made one in 308. In fact, I believe one of the largest whitetail bucks ever killed, if not the largest one ever killed in North America, was killed with this rifle. Do you know what it is? The Winchester Model 80. It's a beautiful rifle. It doesn't look like a classic lever action. It kind of looks like it would be a semi-auto carbine, but it has a little lever on the bottom. Fantastic gun, made in at this point, if you want to consider 120-year-old modern cartridges. You don't have to use straight wall. You don't have to worry about pointed bullets setting off a chain detonation in your tube feed magazine. You can have regular magazines. You can have regular cartridges. You can have all that in a lever action that's light and handy. The Model 80 Winchester 80. I think that's a forgotten Winchester. But if you said I had to hunt with a lever action and you offered me a 94, which is a decent gun, kill plenty of animals, I would certainly go. If you're like, here's an extra elk tag, like fine. I'll take it. But if you said, here's an extra elk tag, extra deer tag, extra antelope, whatever tag, here's an extra tag, and you have to take a Winchester lever action, I would say give me the Model 80. Unless I'm going for nostalgia. If you're like, you're going to, unless I was doing like a nostalgia hunt where I was wearing a Jones hat and plaid flannel and I just wanted to go old school, I would probably hunt with the Winchester Model 80. Probably the more practical choice. Mount modern optics on it. You don't have to worry about the top eject, which has always been one of the kind of quirks of the Model 94, if you want to put an optic on it. So, anyway, the Model 80 is a sweet, forgotten Winchester. How about the shotguns? Now you got the Winchester XPR. Those are made in Turkey. Like, for real, what are we doing here, Winchester? I love the old Winchester guns, but as far as I'm aware, no current manufacturer Winchester firearm is made in America. They're made overseas, Turkey or Japan. I got nothing against Japan, but Turkey I do. They're Muslims, and I assume they pretty much want to cut my head off if they got the chance. Spent a big chunk of my life fighting Muslims, and I don't apologize for that. So I don't really want to send them money. Their new Winchesters are made in Turkey. You probably know about their old school, really popular, the old trench gun Winchesters. You probably know about the 1897. You probably know about the Model 12 featherweights. Those are iconic outside of today's discussion. What about the 1200 and the 1300? Those are really good American-made Winchesters. with good craftsmanship, good quality, that are kind of forgotten. They're kind of the in-between before they went and started making, or not even making, before they just went and started getting Turkish guns and stamping Winchester on them. The Winchester Model 1200 and 1300. These are slick, fast-handling pumps. They will hold their own against a Remington 870 or a Mossberg 500 any day. Guess what I have? I actually have a slightly different variant, a Ranger 120, which was like the budget version, riding behind me in the seat of my truck right now. They're fantastic guns. The Model 1200 and 1300. These are good guns. So, yeah, don't forget about those. If you want to get an American-made shotgun and you see one at a good deal, they're just exquisite quality. There was a time when they were in the running with the 870 and the 500. They kind of lost the race. I don't know what the reason for that was, but I don't think it was because they were made poorly. They are phenomenal guns. So if you find a good 1200, 1300, these also were in the era of interchangeable chokes. So you're probably going to find them that have the old wind choke. The wind choke is one of my favorite versions of a choke, especially the old ones, because they actually have a slight extension where they extend out the end of the barrel and kind of cover over the crown of the barrel. I think this is a phenomenal design. If you're like me, you're hard on guns. You drop guns, you smash guns into things, and protecting the muzzle of the actual barrel itself is important. They have, the ones that I'm familiar with have the old wind choke system. One of my first shotguns was a Winchester 1300. I sold it. I wish I hadn't. This is a phenomenal gun. These are kind of forgotten. Don't forget about them. On the American-made thing, you probably know about the pre-64 Winchester Model 70. This was a controlled round feed based on a Mauser action, based off a 1903 action, refined, elegant. You probably know about that. And you probably know, to cheapen it up, they made it a push feed. Push feeds are popular today, I don't think because they're better, but because they're cheap, much like polymer striker-fired handguns. But they went to a push feed. Now, the push feed Model 70 is still a decent rifle if you want a push feed. It's probably as good or better than a Remington 700. And probably as good or better than that. But that's not why people wanted the 70. I think a lot of them wanted it because of the controlled round feed. They went back to controlled round feed, I think, in the 2000s. They still have a controlled round feed today. But as we aforementioned, not made in America. Made overseas. If you want an American-made Winchester and you don't have the scratch for a pre-64, there was a brief period where they made these in America again. I believe in one of the Carolinas. I forget if it's South Carolina or North Carolina. I want to say South. But in one of the Carolinas, they made the Winchester Model 70 controlled round feed rifle in America. So again, if you don't want a pre-64 and you want a controlled round feed American-made Model 70, that is a thing. And if you just want a new one and you don't care if it's made in America, which is fine. Like, I got nothing against the Japanese except for their pagan, which I'm not really, it's a false or garbage religion. But other than that, they're probably not trying to kill me right now. So there's that. But if you don't care, the new Winchester Model 70s, to be fair, I think made in Portugal or made in, I forget if they're made in Portugal and assembled in Japan or made in Japan and assembled in Portugal, one of those. But Portugal's cool. Portugal's a Christian country. Rock on. But if you want an American-made one, you have that option. You can probably find one of the South Carolina versions of the Model 70. I think that may be forgotten, that they, for a time, when they went back to controlled round feed, they started making them in America again for a brief time before they went overseas. So those exist, they're out there, they're kind of forgotten. A fantastic rifle if you come across one. By all accounts, they shoot well, they're good guns. Anyway, with that, guys, hope you enjoyed this episode of Forgotten Winchester. Do you like this? I've done Ruger, I've done Winchester. Do you want me to keep going? Do you want me to do more obscure guns? More obscure guns in like Remington, Colt? What do you think? Anyway, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all that you do. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. If you want to support the business, you want to chat about guns with a really cool group of like-minded men, support the business, veteran-owned, small company, America, all the things, consider becoming a patron. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. With that, guys, your tactical tip of the day: you don't have to spend a bunch of money to get all kinds of fancy dehydrated food. You going camping in the backcountry, going to spend a couple of days in the backcountry. You don't need Mountain House. You don't need a stove with butane or whatever. You don't need any of that stuff. Get a jar of peanut butter. I prefer plastic for this because it's less heavy, but get 1 pound jars of peanut butter. No, you don't need sugar. No, you don't need raisins. You need peanut butter, and if you're in the wilderness, you probably can find a stick. So, or, your finger. Go savage. But, yeah, just, a jar of peanut butter. That's as good and complete a nutrition for backcountry as you're probably going to get in those super expensive dehydrated meals. Now, if you just want one, you're like, you know what? I'm going out to play kitchen, in the wilderness, and I want to make a meal with 3 sides, and I want fettuccine Alfredo in the wilderness. Yeah, you're going to want the dehydrated meal. But if you just want good calories to keep you going to slay beasts, a jar of peanut butter. It's got protein, it's got fat, it's good for you. It's very calorie dense, so it doesn't take up a lot of room in the pack. It's great. It's a jar of peanut butter. Don't overthink it. Throw it in there. You won't die. You can survive a long time on peanut butter. There's a lot worse foods to survive on. So, yeah, peanut butter. And with that, your tactical verse of the day. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.